I love Pokemon. I do. I really do. I grew up playing Pokemon. It was my childhood. I remember sneaking my DS into my room late at night, playing a copy of Pokemon Platinum, exploring the Sinnoh region, and getting completely lost in the map. Just completely falling in love with this big, giant world, and having this real big sense of adventure. Like, I'm the one going out and finding all these creatures and making a name for myself as a kid. Gosh, that shit was so freaking empowering, dude. The last Pokemon games that I actively remember enjoying were the Gen 5 games. To this day, Black and White are some of my favorite games of all time. I love those games to no end. And then something really interesting happened around the 6th generation of Pokemon. At this point, we've transitioned from a 2D world to a 3D one. And that's not to say that Gen 6 were bad games necessarily, no. They were just kind of awkward. They felt like they were trying to be DS games, and they really hadn't gotten into their 3D roots. Similar to how Gen 4 kind of felt like Game Boy games with 2 screens. Gen 6 kind of felt like Black and White, but with all 3D character models. So now here we are, the year is 2020, and we can see that Pokemon has taken a turn for the worst. The Gen 8 games, Pokemon Sword and Shield, are, in my opinion, probably one of the worst games I've ever played in my entire life. And I mean that with a serious tone of criticism, because I love this series and I want to see it grow and I want to see it flourish. For class, I was asked to review a game that I thought had bad UX design, and so I decided, after years of talking trash on this game, that I was finally going to sit down and write a proper video essay to explain what I do not like about Pokemon Sword and Shield. Buckle up, it's going to be a wild one. Okay, so let me ask a question here. What is the most appealing part of a Pokemon game? Is it the battling? Well, if that's the case, then why don't you just go play some of the online battle simulators like Pokemon Showdown? Is it the story? Well, if that's the case, you're not going to play a Pokemon game and expect The Last of Us. I can certainly tell you that. So, what exactly is the appealing part of Pokemon? Well, from my personal experience, the most appealing part of Pokemon was that sense of adventure that it gave the players. It was that little fantasy that we all had as kids of leaving home and seeing the world and going out and making a name for ourselves and making friends and all that stuff. It was great. It was great stuff, and that was partially why Pokemon Go was so successful, was because it took that concept, that sense of adventure of going out and being a Pokemon trainer, and it put it in real life. This dream, this concept, this sense of adventure is the thing that drives people to play Pokemon. It's the reason why we will play the same game over and over and over again with new mons and little to tiny to no changes made whatsoever, because we can't get enough of this dream. And this dream is the thing that Game Freak has sold us for the last, how old is Pokemon now? For the last 24 years. So what does this have to do with the level design in Pokemon games? Kind of everything. Something that you may not know about Pokemon is that every region that has been created has been based off of some sort of real-world geography. The first 4 generations of Pokemon are all different regions of Japan that have been modified and made into Pokemon regions. And this little itsy-bitsy piece of trivia has been the contributing factor for all of the Pokemon games since. And what's been really exciting is seeing Pokemon expand beyond Japan. The first time we saw, oh, for fuck's sake, my phone went. The first time we saw a Pokemon region that wasn't based off of somewhere in Japan was Unova, which was the good old US of A. And if you say, hey AJ, that doesn't look like America, take a look again, because it's Manhattan. This departure from Japan symbolized a bit of a rebirth in Pokemon. Now you weren't looking for the same Pokemon mixed with some of the new ones. Now you were in a completely different continent. None of the old Pokemon that you knew and loved were there. It was all new, it was all fresh, it was all an exciting experience. You go to Gen 6, it's all France, it's all French, it's Europe, everywhere. Pop over to Gen 8, hey, we're in Hawaii now. Do you like tropical climates and all things Hawaii? Hey, we got you. It's these little things, these little attentions to detail that made the world feel alive. And it added this little sense of lore to the areas that you were in. It made the world feel dense and populated and lived in. And especially in Gen 7 when we started to get NPCs that actually moved throughout the environment and like roads and streets and cars, now things are actually starting to feel like the Pokemon series is growing. Now we're getting this big graphical overhaul that hasn't really been felt since Gen 5. This was the next step. This was the next step right here. This overworld art here, this was the next step for Pokemon. It felt like a big deal, especially when playing it. Okay, so what's Pokemon Sword and Shield based off of? Well, it's supposed to be England. So let's take a look at what England's got. Okay, rolling farmlands and stone slabs here and there. Okay, so far so good. Okay, London with Big Ben and Ferris wheels and crowded lights everywhere. Okay, I'm feeling it. Bagpipes? Well, I think that's Scotland, but okay, we'll roll with it for now. Fairies? I don't know about this one, actually. See, I'd love to sit here and tell you how accurate this is to real life, but the problem is the game moves you along at such a brisk pace, giving you no time to stop and absorb your surroundings, that you might as well just completely ignore all the scenery that's there, because you're never gonna come back and take a look at it again. You see, the early Pokemon games had these things called HMs, or hidden moves. HMs were like the power-ups that you get in Metroid, only you had to teach them to your Pokemon in order to help you cross what were considered natural barriers. Hey, I need to get to Cinnabar Island, but I can't swim. Well, teach your Pokemon surf. Oh, okay, now I can go there. Oh gosh, I wish I could go forward, but there's this big old tree in the way. Teach a Pokemon cut. Oh, okay. Golly gee, I want to see what's over on the other side here, but there's this big frickin' rock in the way. Strength. Now, obviously, people think that HMs were probably not the best thing ever, but as a game designer, HMs were actually a really big stroke of genius that I didn't realize how important they were to making the world feel inhabited as much as it did until they decided to remove them completely from Pokemon. You see, when you had an HM, you also had to make sure that you had a Pokemon that knew how to use it. So, yes, you also had to keep track of what obstacles were in your way, but you also had to keep track of what Pokemon could be used in the overworld to help you navigate it better. Having a set of required moves for your Pokemon to learn helps incentivize you to use different types of Pokemon. It incentivizes you to understand what Pokemon are native to certain routes. It incentivizes you to get familiar with the landscape that you're in. It's also there to help you feel like you're growing stronger as you continue to play the game. Gym badges were not just badges of honor. They were there to help tell you that you were able to do more things in the overworld. When I get a gym badge, now Pokemon of a certain level will respect me, so cool, I can use different moves with higher level Pokemon, fine. But it also meant that I was able to go out and swim in water now finally. Cali-frickin-bunga, dude. And on the subject of gym leaders, what the heck is up with the world design here? You walk everywhere. You move at a breakneck sprint consistently. You get a bike to help you move even faster across a long stretch of land that doesn't even need to be there. There's no HMs whatsoever. You literally earn the ability to fast travel to every town that you've ever been to at the start of the game.
What the heck? How is that possible?
This isn't to say that the game should be as quote-unquote linear or zigzaggy as the old games were. After all, this is the 8th generation of Pokemon on the strongest piece of hardware that Nintendo has ever produced. Game Freak has every right to expand and change the Pokemon formula as much as they want. But here's the thing. They didn't do it. What I'm getting at here is that the old Pokemon games did a phenomenal job of making a world that felt like you could explore it by actually spacing out secrets and making secret areas that had special Pokemon and special little story events and miniature story arcs that were completed with different NPCs, and then that was it. And it wasn't all just set to the main storyline, and you could actually like deviate from the path, and there would still be things to find. You could revisit old areas and there'd be still things to find. There's no incentive to backtrack to older towns in Pokemon. There's no incentive, none whatsoever, no incentive whatsoever. In short, I believe that Pokemon Sword and Shield's level design completely and utterly fails, and I really, really hope that Game Freak can step it up and actually make something that is on par with their past work. Okay, sound design. Yeah, cool. How does sound enhance the gameplay experience? I feel like this is a really big question that often gets overlooked. You see, the whole thing about game feel and about making a good game with good overall UX experience is the whole package has to come together at the end to make something that's a really unique piece of art. And if something is lacking in that field, it's going to show and hinder the entire experience. Now, Pokemon is a series that traditionally hasn't had a lot of sound effects in their games. I think that this has kind of just always been a result of the hardware limitations that they've been on. They've always been on Nintendo's handheld systems, therefore they haven't had as much processing power or sound power as you would have gotten with something like a Super Nintendo or a Nintendo Entertainment System. At the time they were out. See, around Gen 4, we got these games called Pokemon Heart Gold and Soul Silver, and in those games, they really went overboard with sound effects, and I mean like really, really overboard with sound effects. I remember sitting in my bedroom on the day that they came out, sick as a dog, and my family getting me the new Pokemon games to help me feel better, booting up that thing, and the first thing I said to myself when I started moving was, oh my god, I hear footsteps. There were footsteps all over the goddamn place in those Pokemon games. And that was something that made the game feel so much more alive. When I was walking on a hardwood surface, I knew I was walking on a hardwood surface. When I was walking on a grass surface, I knew I was walking on a grass surface. And when I got to water, I heard the ocean. I heard the ocean when I was standing by the ocean. I still have I still remember that moment so freaking vividly. These little things of having different types of sounds for different types of areas and for different types of interactions helps make the world feel more alive and helps with things like level design and your overall immersion of the game. Again, I go back to Gen 7. This is where we had another big sound improvement, right? Now while we're walking around routes and in cities, we're hearing Pokemon cries that you would hear when you enter a battle to help you kind of know what Pokemon are around you and help make the world feel like there are creatures actually inhabiting it as opposed to you're only encountering and hearing a Pokemon when you encounter it in tall grass. Even in areas like cities, we were hearing background noise for the first time with the ocean sounds, and it made the town feel like I was in an actual town with real people, and it helped consistently keep my immersion in the game when I was walking around a full 3D world with full 3D models with regularly sized portion people. Even though there wasn't that many people there, I still heard that there were people there, and my imagination was able to put all the pieces together to not break my immersion, and it was like that everywhere in the game. Pokemon Sword and Shield are interesting games because these are the first Pokemon games ever where we got to actively mix the audio of the game. We could turn off the game's soundtrack whenever we wanted to and listen to what the game sounds like altogether, and it's embarrassing to say the least. Here we are in London, the game equivalent of London, Wyndon City, right? This is supposed to be the biggest city, one of the biggest cities in Pokemon history. It's grandiose, it's up to scale, the music really does a good job of selling that this is like a really big town and it's really, really important, right? And that music there also kind of helps sell that it's like an important place, but when you turn off the music, it really hammers home the fact that this level is a literal ghost town. Without the game's soundtrack there, Pokemon Sword and Shield completely falls apart. I spent an hour just walking around all of Galar with no background music on, and it felt just as empty as the game actually was. Which in a way is technically good sound design because it's super immersive and super accurate to the actual environments that are in. You know, I'm walking around this train station with nobody talking and just this bird chirping, and the fact that when there's no music there, I can actually feel how awkward and forced and cookie cutter this area is. I mean, like, wow, it's like I'm really there. But I digress. That's just the overworld sound, okay? We haven't even talked about the battling sound effects, because that stuff is actually really freaking good. I go back to how I really like the UI in these games. The UI is excellent, and the battling experience, especially in gyms, is exhilarating. Walking into this big giant stadium with a bunch of fans cheering is like, wow, this is really adrenaline pumping. It's like I'm actually at a sporting event. I'm actually feeling that big sense of excitement that everyone always exerts in the Pokemon universe. It's really cool. And then when you start fighting the gym leaders and you've got like all these the crowds chanting, and every time your Pokemon makes a move and it lands a hit, it's like, wow, yeah, woo, yeah, let's go, you know? And then, oh my gosh, and then when the gym leader's on their last Pokemon, the crowd starts chanting, ba, 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 and singing along with the battle music, and that is just like what it's like being at a football game. It's so freaking cool, and it's so freaking good, and that's really awesome. That really gets your blood pumping, especially when you're on like your last Pokemon and it's like really close and everyone's like, wah, you know? But I never really experienced that when I played the game. Besides that, when you have like the Dynamax Pokemon, the cries are way too loud. Which is probably why they gave you a slider to adjust that yourself, even though they probably should have mixed it themselves. And even when you take away the music in the battling, it feels kind of awkward and silly. It really does feel like you just got two 3D models looking at each other and occasionally bopping and dashing. If you took either one away, you'd still be left with a pleasing experience, but if you put both of them together, you're left with a perfect experience. And Pokemon, when you take the music away, its sound effects don't hold up. I only have the digital edition. Pokemon Sword and Shield's art direction absolutely sucks. It's embarrassing to say the least. You see, all of the other Pokemon games were anime-based Pokemon games. The Pokemon designs are very anime, the characters themselves are always in the anime art style, and for the most part, Pokemon has done a pretty good job of keeping with that type of art style. Look at Pokemon Sun and Moon. It's all bright colors, it's all cell shading, it's all nice and simple textures to help you put the pieces together, and it looks pretty damn good on 3DS hardware. Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, still looking good. See, I use these two games as an example because up until Gen 6, all the Pokemon games followed a similar format. You had tiny little overworld sprites with tiny little buildings, and you walked around a grid-based system. We come along to Pokemon Sword and Shield, and inconsistency plagues this game from top to bottom. Character models themselves actually look really good. You can get really close with them and everything will look really clean with nice, clean, crisp, and sharp textures. And a nice, good cell shading outline that actually looks like really good, and I actually am just noticing this now that I'm actually taking a closer look at it. That's actually really freaking good. The Pokemon models look fine. They're the exact same models from Pokemon Sun and Moon. I know this. We data mined the game. It's true. They didn't remake the models from scratch. That was just a lie. The thing that gets me really upset though is why on earth is the detail with clothing so inconsistent? Why does my face and my hair and my pants look great, but my hat looks like it's such a low resolution, like I'm only supposed to be rendering it from a faraway distance? That bothers me. That takes me out of my immersion. And oh god, don't even get me started on the environment art. The shadows look like crap. The detail horizon is so close to your player that you can actively see when things start to get sharp and when they don't get sharp right in front of you because it's like a foot in front of you. The trees look like they're from Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time. And there is no post-processing with corners and surfaces to help highlight the shadows that are supposed to be in there. So when you have a flat little sharp corner on the wild area or with trees or surrounding something like that, there's nothing there. It's just the flat thing. You see where it starts and where it ends, when there should be some shadows there to help it feel more fluffy and full and visualized. It's just some simple post-processing effects. It's not that hard. Look, I did it just now. It was a switch in my engine. The game can't render more than 3 models at a time. I'm walking through a town that I can see the back end to, and only when I get very close to where people should be, they pop into existence. Besides that, they're not there. I don't see Pokemon naturally emerge and feel like they're interacting with their environment. Instead, I witness micro Big Bang cosmology singularities exploding every time I get close enough where it should render a Pokemon. And then there are some trees and areas that are just plain lazy, for Christ's sake. They're just plain lazy. The Pokemon Sun and Moon games looked excellent. And yes, there were some weird things with like the battling, like why on earth is this Wailmer so tiny compared to this Charmander and the trainer character? And the answer was simple. It's just a simple result of the handheld's processing power. So why on earth, when I throw a Steelix out into the battlefield, does it look about the same height as my trainer? And I get mad about this, because I've seen Game Freak put some actual care into it. Because remember when you fought Brock in Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee? Remember when he threw out Brock and you saw how big it was compared to Brock? Remember how they got the scaling right with that? You know how they didn't do that with this game? The details and the scaling and everything is completely and entirely inconsistent. I remember looking back in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, they had a thing in the Pokedex where you could see the size of the Pokemon compared to your trainer, and it helped put in perspective how big these mons were. When trainer models became a mainstay in Pokemon battles, that was really cool because it made it feel like you were actually fighting a trainer and a Pokemon together. And yeah, the tiny limitations of the 3DS hardware made it kind of awkward with some of the scaling, but now we're on the Switch. Now we can actually render giant Pokemon. Now we can actually render the Pokemon at their proper size compared to the trainer. We can see these big ferocious beasts and we can do things with the camera. But no, we're not doing that. It's just Pokemon Sun and Moon with a less polished coat of paint. The foliage and grass and environment stuff looks shoddy at best. Poppin is no less than maybe 3 yards in front of you, and the world refuses to make natural barriers to prevent me from walking to certain areas. I'm sorry. You need to try harder than putting a tiny bush in front of me that's no taller than my ankle to tell me that I can't walk around this giant city. The cutscenes are lazy. They're not even animated. Characters are cloned every single time you walk into a new area. It's just not consistent. There's not enough detail. If you want nobody characters around you, then just make flat models. Look at Persona 5. Persona 5 does that. And don't sit here and tell me that's something that's not achievable on Switch hardware, because Persona 5S runs on Switch just fine with all of this stuff. As a sequel, Pokemon Sword and Shield does not improve on the art. In terms of achieving the anime aesthetic, I feel more like I'm playing with a 3D anime character Unity asset inside pre-made Maya rendering example scenes. And in terms of graphical detail, trees. Okay, and so there you go. That's my video about Pokemon Sword and Shield. Listen, I said it before in the beginning, and I'll say it again now. I love Pokemon. I do. I really, really do. I really, really, really love Pokemon, and I want to see it grow. What I don't like is when game companies and developers lie to their audiences and make excuses for lazy work. Pokemon Sword and Shield from top down to me is so evident that it was lazy and hastily made, and they charged us $60 for it. A full price for a normal AAA game title. I'm upset because the game was lazy, but I'm disappointed because I know Game Freak can do better. Because I've seen them do it time and time and time again. Every Pokemon game that I've played, the good, the bad, have always felt like that it was a passion project of sort. It was made by a team who cared, and they always did cool new little things to keep the series fresh, while also shoving a bunch of other dumb stuff that no one will ever really use. But it was still about the adventure. It still carried the soul of Pokemon. And when I play Pokemon Sword and Shield, the soul is not there. And that makes me really, really scared about those Sinnoh remakes. And with that, I am done with Game UX IMS 314. Thank you all for a wonderful semester. Have a great Thanksgiving and a Happy New Year if you're watching this when this goes up. And, you know, here's to the future of Pokemon. I certainly hope it's safe.